Well, I'm very glad that Edie warmed you up because I'm going to have you all claim your title as artist. So I'd like you all to raise your thumbs like this. I'd like you to point them to yourselves. And when I say, who's the artist, I would love for you to yell out, I am, okay, and own it. So, ready? Who's the artist?
I am.
Oh my gosh, one more time. Let's hear it over in the annex. Who's the artist?
I am.
I love it, because we are the artists of our lives. We are the creative beings, and the wonderful thing that I think that sometimes we forget is that we not only create, but we can recreate. And therefore, when we own that title of artist, there is nothing that stops us. We are not in a box. We are not bound. We are not tied. We get to live that wild artist life, right? Oh, they're artists. They can get away with it. And we can. And the wonderful thing about that is that when we see something and someone says, that's the way it is, as artists, we own it and we say, no, that's not the way it is. That's the way we've allowed it to be. And I'm going to create something different. But in this artistry, I'd like you to consider something a little bit more. To help us picture peace, I want us to start seeing through our hearts. I'd like us to start thinking through our hearts. Because then the actions as our artistry will come out. We will be artistes. And to create a world that becomes our masterpiece. We create our masterpiece. Now, in my own life, my kids will tell you that when the title Peace Master is used, it's because I understand that in the word imperfect, as we see it, I'm perfect. Because in imperfection, I'm perfection. I'm absolutely imperfect, and driving is absolutely the place where that peace is lost on me. But in 2008, I went over to Mumbai, India, on a quest of peace for my own physical self, because I'd been battling an autoimmune. Do that back with me, like we did with Edie. An autoimmune disease. And what ended up happening is that I realized that I wasn't including all of me. That for me to heal, the part that was crying out the loudest was the part that I had to love the most. So I went to India to create peace. But it just so happened that at the same time that I went to create peace, there were 11 young men from Pakistan that were coming to create another hash mark in the battle between India and Pakistan, something which I really knew nothing about. So on this meditation retreat, there were 24 of us, and I had the great pleasure of having a young girl with me who was 13 years old, the same age as my daughter. And I loved having that because my daughter and I were close, and we got to share some of the things because I was away, and it was the first time, and it was Thanksgiving in the States. And I had asked permission because my family knew that, my kids were growing up, and I wanted to see the world. And I wanted to see India too, because it was a place where I could be, get this meditation thing down, right? And so we shared a lot. And she liked art, and so during our days, we were there during the Indian wedding festivals. November happens to be a big time, and Mendi, right, where they wind up the paste and they put it on the hands. It's the most gorgeous art that you can see. It's a living art form that is done freehand by the artists there. So we had drawn all day trying to figure out what we were going to do. And we've been in the swimming pool, and I fancied myself, I know most of you are too young, but Esther Williams. And so I would do all these great moves, and we were going to break our somersault record. And then she asked me to teach her how to draw a dragon. And I said, sure, we'll do this on Friday. And this was Wednesday. And Wednesday at dinner, so often after our evening meditations, we would come back and celebrate, and we would talk about the day. And in this moment, there were 2 flashes of light off to the right. In that moment, the world broke out with the most cacophonous sounds that I've ever heard. The Oberoi Hotel is cavernous, so the sounds went bouncing all over everywhere. The glass was breaking. There was enough heat going across the room that on a sunny day, it would be something that you would see rising off of the horizon ahead of you. But in this moment, there were enough bullets cutting through that restaurant that it was beyond what you could understand as a human being. Naomi immediately went over to her father because we were seated at this table as a family. I was at the front, a mother. Alan was the father of Naomi, who was here. Aunts and uncles on the other sides of us, friends and family, and we were this family unit having dinner. So Naomi went for the father. No, you have to get under the table. Everyone down, everyone over there. I look over, my friend Michael has been shot, and I see him, and I'm worried, but we have to get everyone down. And then there's silence. And in this silence, I realize that there is no room under the table now for me, and Michael is laid out because he's already playing dead, because Alan says to us, play dead. Because the sound that starts up again, we realize they are now coming, table by table, to kill survivors. He said, play dead. And I couldn't, because I didn't understand what type of monster would be coming through. I had to keep my head up because I needed to see what type of monster was coming after me, because, I was just a mom. I was an other illustrator. I had no effect on this world, so to speak, but this monster. And so the way that I was laying, I could see the reflection in the beautiful marble pole that had greeted us every morning. And when this monster turned the corner and the end of that gun turned, my heart broke. Because at the end of this gun was a young man. He was 20. And I know this because I'm a mother. And my son at home was 20. And as a mother, we see our children from the cherubic little round faces, and then they start to toddle, and they lose that baby fat, and then they get into the cut of that man. And this face was familiar, and I wondered how this boy, my son, had to come to our table, how he had to come to me to talk, that this was the only way he could listen or get me to hear him, that he wasn't holding a knife or a fork. And in the oddity that the world provides for you in that split moment, I also shifted into this young man's place. And from his shoes, I realized he too was looking for that monster. And I was that monster. I was the monster. So how does this happen? The two people who have never met in this world, two people who have never communicated, and the kid was wearing khaki pants and a white shirt, which is the uniform that every student in Nashville wears. I would have been in a conversation with you. And the backpack would not have been loaded for a siege, but with books or possibly guitars or music, and we would have talked. But here in this room, what caused this? The myths between us that did not allow truth to be seen for either one of us to have a conversation before it got to this point. And I laid my head down. The bullet entered above my heart. It traveled all the way down my spine, entered my stomach cavity, and exited out the top of my hip. Every morning I dress. I know the path that peace did not take. When I awoke, I heard Naomi take her last breath. I'm committed to make a different mark on life, so I draw peace dragons. I do it to honor not only Naomi's last wish, but I do it to honor the young boy who didn't get those options, that creativity, that allowance to be or choose something different. I do it because we can make the change by taking a look at things differently, from putting and taking down those myths. So when I draw peace dragons, the first thing we do is we take apart the myth of the dragon. So when I ask children, what do they think of when they think of dragon? They say what? They say fire. They say, everything, scales, knives, and construction. They get crazy with it. They get very loud. And so we break the myth of the dragon because at one point, the dragon was the benevolent, the wise, the kind. So how did it get this rap? And then we start to draw, and we take apart another myth. Every one of you can draw. Now, if I'd asked if you could all draw, a dragon, I'm sure you would have all not raised your hand. But you can draw dragons, and I use letters, numbers, shapes, and that's what we do. So we take the myth of not being able to draw, and we break it apart. And so everyone, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, they can draw them, and they add their own details to it. So we take things that are familiar, the question mark. After lunch, takes a nap, falls on its head. Now we've got the top of the dragon and the snout, the head and the snout. So we simply put it asleep. It's going to be flying, so I'm going to angle it upwards. Put it here. I like snack foods, so I always add a little pretzel stick down at the front, and that closes the front of the snout. J plays a great deal of parts in this part of creating this dragon, and it's a stick with a C or a U on the bottom of it, and it doesn't really matter what we call it, as long as the kids know how to draw it and how to apply it. And I found this out because when I was in the Philippines recently, I'd done a whole class, and these amazing first graders came and showed me their dragons, and then the teacher told me, they don't speak English. It's like, okay, because they were pretty good, and they laughed at my jokes. So, I thought that was pretty astounding. So we're going to take that J, and it's going to run down the same line, and it's going to come this way, and I'm going to apply there. And Nathan talked about Pac-Man, waka, 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 and I got to tell you, generationally, everyone has still played this, and that C is going to look like it's going to eat the bottom of that J. So now we have this over here, and then we put another little J here, and there we go. A's, V's, we start to look at it, and all of a sudden, children see letters like they have never seen them before. They learn that it's a communication skill, but now the skills and strokes that they used for writing. And they learn other things because everyone has their own signature style. And how you draw and how I write are all different things, and we have our own way. Not better, not worse, just different. And we take the best forward of our drawings into the next drawing. Explore. We don't take baggage, luggage with us. We explore. There's not a right or a wrong. There's explore and learn. And in my life on that Mumbai floor, the thing that I took from that floor was those great friendships and knowing that I would honor their lives by opening up hearts. And that's what we do. So we start to create this. But then when I say the word peace in front of it to children, there's a silence. And someone might raise their hand, right? Not shout out. They'll raise their hand and they'll say, quiet. And I'll imagine that someone starts going like this, peace and quiet, right? And that's not what we're talking about. So we have to help our children define what peace is. And when I say, if peace were a color, everyone understands, they'll give out a color. If peace were a sound, what would it be? And they'd give out. If peace were a song, who would be singing it? And each time I throw something, it's louder and louder and louder because every voice counts. And for us to see truth in the middle, it's not just that young man and I, but every point around that circle that makes truth. When we draw a peace dragon, we also leave the hands of the dragon open. Because the child learns what gift they want to give to the world. When I got the approval to do the talk here, I said, I'd love to come, but I want to work with the kids. So I want you to understand that Grand Rapids, you guys so rock. You opened up your doors, and within 3 days, I got to see 1,000 children. You helped me reach not only over 10,000, but when I leave, I go tomorrow to another school, I will have broken 11,000 dragons. And that's one heart reaching out to the world that says, every voice. Please listen to the Grand Rapid Dragons who are taking flight today.
I dream of a place where love is smile can erase the sadness that hate wants to scatter. Don't look too far.
Peace brings me to a land where everyone is happy for who they are, and they don't want to be someone else.
You have the power to let it show.
I'd like to end by just saying that while I was healing, I wrote a story called Every Heart. And in it, a little boy comes upon a dragon, and he says, "You can't be a peace dragon. You have all those spiky scales." And she removes the scale, and she said, "If you had just looked," and of course, when he looked beyond the spike, he could see that she was made of all hearts. She said, "Every heart has a point, every point a direction. Which way shall you go?" And as for me, I choose the path of love. So, Hearties, I ask you to be the peace dragons, and what will you bring? Thank you.